Hey, what's up guys? Today, I'll show you a psychological thriller film, Burning. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. A young aspiring novelist, Mr. Shy, comes to the city to do some errands. He walks along the city's streets where he fortuitously stumbles across his childhood friend from the rural areas, called Beauty, who works part-time as a dancer at the store. It turns out that she had plastic surgery that greatly changed her face, so he fails to recognize her at first glance, but she immediately introduces herself to him. After her work, they smoke together in a narrow alley to catch up with each other. Mr. Shy says he is only an aspiring writer, since he is not confident enough to be called a writer. As their conversation descends into silence, Mr. Shy gives her the pink watch he won earlier from the store raffle. After that, they have some drinks at a restaurant. Beauty shares that she is planning to travel towards Africa. Mr. Shy then asks about the reason why she is going there, but she disregards his question and proceeds to perform an art dance called pantomime, where she acts like she is eating an imaginary tangerine. She explains that this art relies upon the mind's capacity to forget that something does not exist. This means that she can taste the tangerine upon forgetting that it does not exist. She then shares the two types of hunger, the little hunger and the great hunger. The little hunger is the hunger of a human's appetite. In contrast, the great hunger is the hunger to seek the ultimate meaning of life, that is, the reason for one's existence. She then says that she will go to Africa to seek meaning to satisfy her great hunger. So she asks Mr. Shy for a favor to feed her cat at her apartment while she's gone. The following day, he rides a bus to meet Beauty. He carries big bags, so she asks him why he carries them. He reveals that he is returning to their home in the rural area. Apparently, his father runs into a problem while his mother already left them years ago. This means that no one is staying at their house to feed the cow, so he needs to go home to take care of the cow. Shortly after, Beauty calls her cat as they arrive at the apartment, but the cat does not come out. She then says that the cat is shy towards strangers. This makes him think that the cat only exists in her imagination, but she says she won't make him come there just to feed an imaginary cat. Suddenly, she reveals to him that he called her ugly during their childhood. She then challenges him to call her ugly again, but he becomes speechless upon seeing her beauty. This makes her hormone rage, and she proceeds to tongue massage him. As they reach the bed, he starts touching her small but beautiful mountains, long enough before he proceeds to plow her grassy farmland. As he is about to reach the climax, he looks at the window where he sees the Seoul Tower. Later, Mr. Shy arrives at their house in the rural areas. He walks in at their desolated house, where a weird smell awaits him. Despite that, he begins to feed the cow. The following day, as he eats his breakfast, the TV news broadcasts the unemployment among youths. This news reflects his situation and Beauty's situation since they do not have a stable job. Shortly after, he comes outside to look at his old and grungy truck. He also checks the sharp knives hidden in a locker room inside a storage room. Later, he comes to Beauty's apartment to feed her cat since she has already gone to Africa, but he cannot find the cat, despite finding cat poop in the litter box. When he sits at Beauty's bed, he suddenly remembers her hormones smell, so he plays with his hot sausage while looking at her photo. As he enjoys the pleasurable moment, he takes a look at the Seoul Tower again through the window. Soon after, he comes to his father's hearing at the court. Apparently, his father inflicted a minor injury on a government official. He suddenly walks out of the court before his father declares his plea on the case. It turns out that his father is a prideful man who chooses to get jailed rather than apologize for his mistakes. 2 weeks later, he comes again to feed the cat at Beauty's apartment. He puts food in the container, but the cat is still nowhere to be found. Shortly after, he plays with his hot sausage again while looking at the Seoul Tower. He suddenly receives a call from Beauty, who tells him to pick her up at the airport. Later, he happily picks up Beauty at the airport, but to his surprise, Beauty is with another man called Rich Guy, who she met in Africa. He gets disappointed as she only introduces him to Rich Guy as a friend since he assumes a hormone ship going on with him and Beauty. Shortly after, they ride his grungy truck towards the restaurant to eat. Along the way, Rich Guy is talking to his mother on the phone. Rich Guy is boasting to his mother about the superiority of his DNA over the others. At the restaurant, Beauty tearfully describes her experience of the African sunset. She reveals that she wants to vanish like the sunset, as if she never existed. Her tears greatly fascinate Rich Guy as he reveals that he never cried in his entire lifetime. This arouses Mr. Shy's curiosity, so he asks Rich Guy about his work. Rich Guy then vaguely says that his work is to play. Suddenly, Rich Guy's friend arrives to deliver his fancy car to him. As they are about to leave, Rich Guy confidently asks to take Beauty to her home. So Beauty decides to ride with Rich Guy's fancy car while Mr. Shy sadly drives his old truck alone to his home. The following day, he asks the town mayor to sign a petition for his father. Suddenly, he receives a call from Beauty. He happily meets her at a fancy cafe, but he instantly gets disappointed upon knowing that Rich Guy is also there. Shortly after, Rich Guy invites them to his apartment to cook pasta. Mr. Shy observes the fancy apartment, while Rich Guy and Beauty happily cook the pasta. Mr. Shy comes to the bathroom where he sees makeup and various women's accessories in the cabinet. This makes him suspect that Rich Guy is a womanizer because he thinks that Rich Guy keeps the accessories in the cabinet as a trophy. So later at the terrace, he asks Beauty why Rich Guy keeps meeting her. She reveals that Rich Guy simply thinks that she's an interesting person. Later at night, Rich Guy brings them to a fancy bar to drink with the rich people. The rich people are extremely bored while listening to Beauty's story about Africa. Meanwhile, Rich Guy also yawns at the side since he seems to be uninterested in her story. The following day, Rich Guy and Beauty visit Mr. Shy's home. Beauty then remembers her childhood at their place since she lived in the area. She reveals that during her childhood, she fell into a well. She thought at the moment that no one would find her, but Mr. Shy suddenly came to save her. However, Mr. Shy cannot remember her story. As the sunset comes, the three of them smoke some pot together. When they reach the ecstatic moment, Beauty removes her clothes to dance through the sunset. She then passionately performs a bird dance, which expresses her desire to be free from everything. She suddenly cries while dancing. Shortly after, she falls asleep due to tiredness. After that, they proceed to have a conversation, where Rich Guy reveals that his hobby is burning abandoned greenhouses. Rich Guy says that it is really simple. He just needs to set the greenhouse on fire, and in a few minutes, the greenhouse is gone as if it never existed. Apparently, Rich Guy thinks that burning the useless greenhouses is necessary to reduce them, since he thinks that there are a lot of them in Korea waiting to be burned down. In fact, he reveals that he is about to burn a greenhouse nearby the area. Later at night, Mr. Shy asks Beauty why she easily removes her clothes in front of men. He then calls her a prostitute for doing that. Shortly after, Rich Guy and Beauty leave together. Sometime later, he worriedly calls Beauty, but he cannot reach her phone anymore. He then proceeds on looking for a burned greenhouse in their area, to confirm if Rich Guy means literally or metaphorically when he speaks about burning greenhouses. Suddenly, he receives a call from Beauty's phone, but no one speaks on the phone. So he checks her apartment, but it is locked. Later, he desperately tries to find the burned greenhouse. At this moment, he thinks that burning greenhouses is Rich Guy's metaphor for killing useless people for enjoyment. He thinks that Rich Guy refers to Beauty as a useless greenhouse very close to him, waiting to be burned down. The following day, he returns to Beauty's locked apartment, where the landlady lets him inside. He reasons out that he needs to feed the cat, but the landlady informs him that there is no cat inside. Inside, he finds Beauty's apartment in a very neat condition, which is unusual since Beauty never cleans her apartment. This makes him think that Beauty is really missing. He then proceeds to ask her friend at work, but her friend does not know her whereabouts. Her friend suspects that she went into hiding from her debt. He also tries to find her in the pantomime class, but the instructor informs him that it has been a long time since Beauty came to the class. In desperation, he secretly follows Rich Guy at a fancy cafe. He asks Rich Guy about the greenhouse. Rich Guy then reveals that he has already burned a greenhouse near Mr. Shy's home. So, Mr. Shy tells Rich Guy that he checks every greenhouse near his area, but he cannot find the burned greenhouse. Rich Guy reasons out that Mr. Shy fails to see the burned greenhouse since it is too close to him. Apparently, Rich Guy dates another woman after Beauty goes missing. When Mr. Shy asks him about Beauty's whereabouts, he just vaguely answers that Beauty simply disappears into thin air. Later, he visits Beauty's family, hoping they know about her whereabouts. But it turns out that Beauty never comes home for a long time since she can't show herself at home unless she pays her debt. He then asks them about Beauty's experience of falling into the well during her childhood. In response, her family reveals that there is no well existing near their house. They then tell him that Beauty is just good at fabricating stories. He then goes to Beauty's old house to personally check it, but he cannot find a well existing there. In desperation to find Beauty, he starts following Rich Guy's every movement, hoping that he will find her. He comes to an art gallery where he witnesses Rich Guy's family enjoying their meal. He even secretly follows Rich Guy along the highway. Shortly after, they reach the mountain areas in the middle of nowhere, but he only finds Rich Guy coming there to contemplate at the lake. The following day, he comes to meet his mother at a cafe. He then asks her about the well near Beauty's house. Apparently, his mother remembers a dried-up well existing there, contrary to the claims of Beauty's family. At this moment, he is in a state of confusion, thinking if Beauty really lies about her story about falling into the well. Later in the evening, he comes to spy on Rich Guy again. But this time, Rich Guy is able to see him, so Rich Guy invites him to come over inside the apartment. He notices that Rich Guy has a new cat, When he comes to the bathroom, he finds Beauty's pink watch with the women's accessories in the cabinet. This further increases his suspicion that Rich Guy did something bad to Beauty. Shortly after, he comes outside when the cat suddenly runs towards the parking lot. He then chases it. The cat appears to be elusive, but it suddenly comes to him when he calls the cat's name. This confirms that the cat in Rich Guy's apartment is Beauty's cat. This further arouses his suspicion that Rich Guy is responsible for Beauty's disappearance. Shortly after, Rich Guy's friends arrive to have a party at the apartment. He joins them at the party where he notices that Rich Guy is yawning again, while Rich Guy's new woman is telling her story. He then abruptly leaves the party. Rich Guy follows him to the parking lot and tells him not to be so serious about things. Rich Guy also advises that he needs to enjoy things so he can feel alive. The following day, he comes to the court where the judge is about to read the final decision about his father's case. In the end, the judge sentences his father to be imprisoned. After that, he sells his father's beloved cow. At this moment, he is completely alone since his father is in prison while he already sells his pet cow. In the next scene, it appears that Beauty is walking Mr. Shy's hot dog at her apartment, but it turns out that he is only fantasizing about her. In reality, he is alone, lying in her bed. Meanwhile, Rich Guy is putting makeup on his new woman. Rich Guy is passionately doing it, as if it is a ceremony for an important event. In the end, Rich Guy is smoking a cigarette while also waiting for Mr. Shy's arrival in the middle of a desolate field. It turns out that Mr. Shy invites Rich Guy to come there. Soon after, Mr. Shy arrives, driving his truck. When he walks down the truck, he instantly stabs Rich Guy, thinking that Rich Guy is responsible for Beauty's sudden disappearance. Rich Guy tries to walk towards his car while gasping for breath, but Mr. Shy follows Rich Guy to finally kill him. Rich Guy then intently looks at Mr. Shy while holding him tightly. Mr. Shy proceeds to stab him again. After that, Mr. Shy puts him inside the car. Mr. Shy then pours gasoline all over the car. After that, he slowly removes his bloody clothes and puts them inside as he is about to set them on fire. To finish his murder act, he finally sets the car on fire. He then proceeds on driving away with his grungy truck, while Rich Guy is burning together with the fancy car. This film depicts Mr. Shy and Beauty's constant struggles to get out of their unsatisfied life. Beauty's desire is to be free from being trapped in her life as a lower class, just like her being trapped in the well for too long waiting for someone to get her out of there. On the other hand, Mr. Shy struggles to understand the rich guy's life as an upper class. He likes to overlook the Seoul Tower, dreaming of flying like a bird in the free sky, but reality just plays like a glass window, separating him from reaching it. During all these struggles, Mr. Shy's father chooses to defend his pride peacefully, but ends up in jail. Beauty tries to embrace it, but ends up becoming the richie's prey, while Mr. Shy vents his rage and resorts to violent revenge for his lost lover, but ends up being a murderer, all of which signifies their helpless struggles against the solidified social class. They are just like the play toys used to satisfy the rich's boredom and the abandoned greenhouses waiting to be burned. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.